The Suns wanted to take pressure off Steve Nash, so they had to shake it up a little bit. How are you? This is Fantasy Hoops. Glad to have you with us. Lauren Shehadi, Jamey Eisenberg. Some movement going down. Let's talk about it. Phoenix wanted to add a great scorer in the backcourt. Jason Richardson, their guy, Jamey.
Yeah, absolutely. They send away, two guys who have been with Phoenix what seems like forever, and Boris Diaw and Raja Bell. Jared Dudley, not so much a big impact in this trade, but you look at Jason Richardson coming to Phoenix. It's not going to be it's not the Mike D'Antoni Phoenix Suns anymore, so keep that in mind. So Richardson still becomes exactly what he was in Charlotte. Maybe a little bit of a boost now that he's in the Western Conference and defenses is obviously non-existent. So I think you look at Richardson, he's still a number 2, borderline number 1 fantasy guard. You're still going to start him every week. The three-point shots may go up a little bit. He will benefit from playing with guys like Nash and Shaq and Amari Stoudemire, so that helps. When you look at the guys going to Charlotte, though, Boris Diaw, I think, gets the biggest boost in this trade because if you remember 2005, when he was starting for the Phoenix Suns, he averaged 13 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. Those type of numbers are there for him. Rod Higgins, the GM for Charlotte, said that he thinks that Diaw could be a better scorer with the Bobcats. I think that's true. So I think you look at him, he'll probably start at power forward for the Bobcats there. It's a very nice lineup that they're trying to put together. Not going to win many games, but when we're talking fantasy-wise, Diaw fits in nicely. Will play alongside of Emeka Okafor, in between Okafor and Gerald Wallace. Raja Bell will become the starting shooting guard there. I think you look at Bell, he'll be about the same. He's averaging a low for the last 6 years, 9.6 points. But he's going to sort of be in that same boat because he'll be sharing time with Raymond Felton and DJ Augustin.
Talk to me about the time of Mike James as he goes to the nation's capital. Going to have to share time at the point, right?
You're going to like Mike James now, right?
I know.
Yeah.
Well, he's got to share time with Gilbert Arenas.
Well, that's the interesting part
Sure.
of this trade, that Gilbert Arenas now. The reason that the Wizards made this trade is because Gilbert Arenas is probably going to be out now until February, if not longer. I think they're looking at the long-term picture of this team for this season and maybe going forward. Arenas signed that big deal, had the knee problem, hasn't played since signing that contract. And I think you look at what this move says. Mike James, the immediate starter. Javaris Crittenton, maybe the starter for the future in Washington if Gilbert Arenas' knee doesn't hold up. So I think you're looking at this as Gilbert Arenas fantasy owner. This is not a good trade because they're looking at this as Arenas may not be ready for January as expected. Could be February now is the early word that we're hearing. So you look at Mike James, he gets a big fantasy boost because he's been sort of a good scorer throughout his career when given playing time. He was obviously in the doghouse in New Orleans. Byron Scott never really liked Mike James' game, which is why they go out and get a veteran like Antonio Daniels to back up Chris Paul. We're not going to worry about Daniels unless Chris Paul gets hurt. But you look at James, if he's available in your league, pick him up now. There's some guys in this trade that you can add. If you're looking at keeper leagues, Crittenton's a good guy you could pick up. And looking at leagues right now, Boris Diaw, Mike James, these are guys you should definitely add, and at some point you're going to start them.
Okay, Jamey, I want to talk to you about the situation in Indiana. It's not quite Mike Dunleavy who, but Marquis Daniels is picking up some pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point you bring up there because I think you look at the way that Marquis Daniels has played. It's going to allow Mike Dunleavy to come back a little bit slower. Doesn't have to rush back from the knee injury. So I think you look at what's going on with Daniels. He's just playing well, averaging a career high 16 points, 5 rebounds, really getting it done, doing a good job rebounding from the guard spot there. Been a nice surprise for the Pacers. I think you look at Danny Granger, nice player. Troy Murphy, as you'll see as one of the starts here this week, having a great season, a couple game-winning tip-ins, especially the one against the Lakers there. So you look at this team, they're sort of still trying to find their identity. TJ Ford at point guard, Jarrett Jack coming off the bench. They've had a couple nice wins, and I think Marquis Daniels is a big part of that. I definitely would start him this week if you have the opportunity. 4 games for them, good matchups.
Do you start Ramon Sessions because of that Michael Redd thing? Are his numbers going to continue to suffer, James?
Yeah, absolutely. His last 5 games, he's really taken a hit. The biggest reason is not only Michael Redd coming back, but also Luke Ridnour being healthy. You look at Sessions, he played great, had that tremendous stretch, toward the end of October, beginning of November, the middle of November toward the end of November. October, they were still playing preseason games. What are we talking about here? I think you look at, you look at Sessions, he's just going to, continue to be sort of that backup guard. Still a guy worth holding on to in keeper leagues, maybe a good reserve if you have the space to keep him on your team. But I think you look at right now, it's just too hard to start him. And the schedule coming up for Milwaukee this week, not exactly the greatest when it comes to guard play. Obviously, if you're looking at guards, it's Redd and Ridnour right now.
Okay, there's always space in your lineup for Kevin Love. Kevin Love's good. Minnesota wants to be good. Is Kevin Love the solution?
Well, he's a rookie that's showing a lot of promise. You look at the way he's played recently. 4 double-digit rebounding games in his last 5. He's averaging 11.4 points, 12.2 rebounds in his last 5 games. Really looking like a quality top 10 draft pick, which is why Minnesota took him there. He's playing well alongside Al Jefferson, sort of becoming a good fantasy option. I think you look at the matchups this week, has an opportunity to play well. If he's out there in your leagues, pick him up. If you have him on your team and you've been sitting him on your bench, you could definitely play him this week because I think you look at him, he'll continue the rebounding totals. 3 games this week, he's worth using.
Let me ask you this. If you were late to a job interview, would you get the job?
Probably not.
You know where I'm going with this. Rudy Gay's got to be on time to get playing time.
Yeah, not only that, he's got to play good matchups. And the thing about Rudy Gay, which is why you see Rudy Gay and Hakeem Warwick on this list in terms of sit options, only 2 games this week. And I know you're probably going to say the Denver Nuggets only had 2 games in the previous scoring week. In Week 7, Carmelo Anthony had a huge game. You could start guys like that. Well, Rudy Gay is not Carmelo Anthony. I think you look at the Memphis Grizzlies with the 2 games that they had. Gay struggled against New Orleans, which is one of the teams that he's going to face this coming week. Only had 6 points, 1 rebound, and just over 20 minutes of work. I think you look at that type of production, could be similar. It'd obviously be better, but not to the point where you want to start him. So I think you look at Rudy Gay, the Memphis Grizzlies. These are guys you probably want to avoid this coming week. Obviously, Gay's hard to sit. He's one of the guys you drafted with a high draft pick, but I still think you look at Gay, Hakeem Warwick, some of these other players, sit them down.
Okay, Al Harrington is not hard to sit. I know that none of you fantasy owners will disagree with me on that point.
Yeah, you look at the way he's playing since coming to New York, just been tremendous. He has 6 games over 20 points since the trade. Just been fantastic coming off a huge game this previous week against New Jersey. I think that's the type of production you can get from pretty much all the Knicks. You look at any given day, any of these players can step up big. And the interesting thing about the Knicks this coming scoring period is they're going to Phoenix. So Mike D'Antoni is going to want to try and win that game, going to want to put on the typical show that the Phoenix Suns are missing, which is why they go out and make this trade for Jason Richardson. So I think you look at guys like Harrington, Quentin Richardson, Chris Duhon, hopefully Nate Robinson is back. All these guys can be good starting options. Wilson Chandler as well coming into this week, strictly on that one game alone, because I think you could see a lot of points from Harrington especially, but all the Knicks because D'Antoni obviously wanting to go back to Phoenix and show that
that's motivation.
They got rid of the wrong guy.
And Harrington exploded on Wednesday night. Greg Oden has not been exploding. Inconsistency is the name of the game there. Is it going to get better, Jamie?
Not this week. This is another guy. Same thing why you see a lot of the Blazers on this list, guys like Steve Blake, Travis Outlaw. I still start Brandon Roy, but you look at the Blazers, only 2 games this week, and Greg Oden has 2 games in his last 3 under 10 points, under 10 rebounds. He did have a double-double over that span, but only 10 points and 10 rebounds. He's just not getting it done. You're going to have to expect some inconsistent play. Remember, he's still a rookie. I know he was drafted 2 years ago, but he's still a rookie by NBA standards because he didn't play last year. Still trying to find his way as a starting option, starting fantasy option. I think you look at him, he's a low-end number 2 guy at this point. I think there's some guys that you can look at to start out there. Al Harrington obviously being one of them, but you look at guys like Anderson Varejao might be on your waiver wire. You could pick him up. Maybe somebody like Arasho Nesterovic, who's been just a little bit more consistent for those surprise Indiana Pacers. So I think you look at Oden right now, just not getting it done for fantasy owners, and I would sit him, especially with the 2 games this week.
Okay, well that is the buzz in the world of fantasy basketball. For Jamey Eisenberg, I'm Lauren Shehadi. Goodbye.